The topics and opinions expressed on the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4WN Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4WN Radio, its employees, or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4WN Radio.
Welcome to Success Secrets Exposed with Sally A. Curtis, where we share stories of challenge, success, and inspiration, along with practical tips and strategies to move you forward to your success. And now, here is your host, Sally A. Curtis.
Good evening, good morning, and good day to you all, and welcome to another episode of Success Secrets Exposed. You're in for a treat today. I've got a very, very special guest coming on to talk about fitness for men as well as age management for men. So do stay tuned, ladies, because this is a great way that you're going to be able to support your men and find out a little bit more about what's going on behind the scenes for them. So for those that are new to the show, I'm a content repurposing whiz for speakers, authors, coaches, and consultants. And it's my role to help them turn their current content and existing collateral into 2 years worth of social media posts, for example, to help them increase their visibility, their credibility, and their profitability. Effectively, I help them turn their existing content into new profits. Now, today I'm excited to share a guest with you, Arman Eckelbarger. Now, Arman works with men that are 40 plus to help them give back control of their life by helping them improve their health, their physique, and their mind. He actually helps them finish their day energized so they can spend more quality time with their spouses, their family, and on their passion projects. Now, he has worked with thousands of people over the last 30 plus years, both personally and corporately. And he's actually found a method that works for everyone, not just the majority. He's actually also a certified national exercise and sports trainer and personal trainer, a corporate wellness consultant, and he's worked for 17 years with the top fitness organisations such as Gold's Gym, Australian Bodyworks, and LA Fitness. He's also a pro bodybuilder and an age management consultant, which was the thing that intrigued me. So please help me welcome to the show, Arman Eckelbarger.
Hi.
Good evening. How are you?
Doing good. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. Well, as I said to you when we met a little while ago, I'm really, really curious to explore this whole concept of the personal training and I suppose the fitness as it relates to men, and the fact that you've discovered a method that can work for everybody. So, can you share with the audience a little bit about your own personal backstory, please?
Okay, well, I've been involved with fitness. I played sports in high school and went to college and couldn't continue sports because just didn't make it there. But I wanted to continue to take care of myself, and so then I got into some weight training. I was very small. I was 120 pounds as a senior, so I wanted to make some changes, and so weight training helped with that. And as I started doing it, I wanted to continue it, and so I just evolved doing weight training and learning more about nutrition through my life. And then I got more involved with fitness organizations and stuff like that. But then as things evolved over time, I had a lot of success in that. The aging process started to kick in. And this is for me, it was in like the mid 40s. I'm 58 now. Yeah. So it was like, and I really didn't think about it much. My wife started to comment on it. She's like, this aging thing sucks. And I'm like, well, okay, but I'm not sure we could do a whole lot about it. So, but, I was pretty successful with what I learned how to do. So I started making changes in making additional changes to my current lifestyle. I was noticing that things weren't working as well as they used to. And so then that's like, all right. So then I started doing more deep diving into how the body ages. And then just over a period of the last 12 years, maybe 13 years, been a student of that, and then adapting as I learned more, and then I started helping other people with it on top of that.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? You sort of, I remember for myself, because I'm in my mid-50s as well, you sort of,
Yeah.
30 something's easy, 40 something's okay, and then you start to creep towards that 50, and then it just suddenly does this drop off, and it's like, what the heck? And you do have this suddenly, I've got to, what am I going to do? And it's almost that panic as to, what do we do next? So from and this is a curious question, from the perspective of the, women and men, what's the difference that you found, obviously starting with your wife making the comment, as all wives will do, both for themselves and for the men. What do you find the difference is between the sort of perspectives around the fitness and the aging process as it relates to men and women?
Well, aging is, basically inevitable, but there's certain things that make you age faster. So that's one of the key things I've realized. And because I was able to maintain my fitness level with my training and my nutrition, it helped me, in my opinion, a lot. It helped my wife a lot. So the things that start happening is your energy systems aren't the
Mm,
same. Your recovery starts to be different,
yeah.
and it's real easy to gain weight. So, and I didn't have a ton of those problems, but I had some.
Mm,
And it was like, okay, what can I do to improve this? And, I had to start from scratch. So I made a lot of stupid mistakes as far as, wasting time. You can waste a lot of time with this stuff. So, because I'm a guinea pig for everything I do for my clients, I test it on myself
yeah.
first. And then based on that, I can explain to them, well, this is what happened to me. So I
Mm,
would just say from a guy's perspective, they just kind of go with it. Women tend to fight it more. They tend to like, well, what else? They're a little bit more into getting creative, but maybe it's different. Like some of it's real simple, like Botox and cosmetic type things. But at the end of the day, they're more keen to it, and guys just kind of roll with it. But there are some guys that decide, hey, I'm going to relook at this, and so that's kind of where I was at. It's like, well, what can you do? I mean,
mm, yeah.
it's kind of
And
an unknown.
yeah, and I think the big thing, the key, and you've just said some really great key, I suppose, words and key curiosities there is around that, the energy systems changed. That was a
Yeah,
really significant one for me. And I've just been doing some physical labor in the garden, and you said the word recovery, and it's like, yeah, I got out of bed this morning and everything was a bit like, so that
yeah,
recovery becomes very different. And that almost sort of sneaks up on you and sort of almost explodes in your face, and you don't realize it until you're
yeah.
actually going through it. So what can I suppose what can we be looking at, and what is part of some of the things that we can that we should be doing and can be doing to help with that energy, as well as the recovery side of things?
Well, there's a lot of approaches you can take depending on how you want to address it. So one thing that I would strongly recommend to everybody with the way that technology is get extensive lab work done
Yeah.
that can check all your hormone levels along with the other statistics that you need, like your glucose and your you know cholesterol and all these liver function, kidney function, these kind of things. Typically, when you go to a doctor, they're going to check those things: glucose, liver function, kidney function, and stuff like that. But they're never gonna. They don't typically check the hormone
Right.
levels, and hormones are the messengers that tell your body how to operate. So when they're not functioning at an optimal level, you're not going to function at an optimal level. So an example of that is when you're in your 30s, mid 30s, or maybe even late 30s, you're pretty much bulletproof. You don't really worry about a whole lot if you've been taking care of yourself. It's like
Yeah.
you're good to go all the time.
Yeah.
It's when you start to notice the changes, which are subtle. Your
Mm,
hormones decline typically 2% a year, starting from the age of 25. So when you're in your 40s, you got about a 40% loss, and that's in a perfect world with no stress and you're eating good and everything being normal, which that's not typical at this day and age. So, and you're seeing a lot more incidents of declining hormones, especially in males, and a lot of that has to do with their lifestyle factors too, because it's different than 40 years ago.
mm,
So that's another thing I've kind of learned and realized because of convenience of processed foods and, a lot of sugar and these things they're gonna age you faster. Too much alcohol, not getting enough sleep, all factors like that where you're having a lot of fun, which is fine. I get that, but you need to be making sure if you want to get more out of life that you're doing some things to help protect against having your fun time. So,
Mm,
and there's a lot of parts to that can be adjusted and improve, your energy and
mm,
especially with nutrition. Nutrition is critical, and then supplements that they have now can help. And then obviously sleep is critical, and so I'm a student of that now as well. So on top of that, if your hormones are not functioning properly, they have good technology now to where you can correct that and correct it in a good sense. So,
mm,
and that can get, it's not as complicated as you may think it is, but it is somewhat technical depending on the
mm.
medical professionals you're working with. So,
Yeah. Yeah, I will just expand on that if I can, just from a blood works perspective, because I've got a girlfriend that works in the fitness area, and she got me to go and get the bloods and things done. And for me here in Australia, trying to find a doctor that was
mm,
supportive of doing these extra tests and allowing me to have that information to pass on to the next person that can read it and understand it and help me interpret it like yourself was actually a challenge. So it is, yes, the technology is there, but it's also about finding the right people to support you to get the use out of the information that you're able to attract. But critical and very insightful when you do. So one of the areas that you also work with these men that are over 40 is as it relates to that struggling excess belly fat, which is
yeah.
generally the dig in the ribs that happens from the wife around that. So talk us through what's going on there and how you actually work with them to reduce that.
Well, that's nutrition. Now,
Yeah.
hormones can help with that process, but nutrition is what's the most important element. And so, what happens over time is your lifestyle factors, depending on what those are, and how you're eating. If you start consuming too many carbohydrates,
Mm,
that's one of the key things that happens. And so, carbohydrates, sugars, they're designed to go into the muscles in the liver. Okay, that's what they do. That's where they're stored. But what happens if you're not burning that energy off? So when you have excess carbohydrates,
mm,
they have to go somewhere, and you're only going to excrete so much. You're only going to burn so much. So that gets stored as fat when the insulin comes up to process the carbohydrates. So the
mm,
bigger problem we have in the world right now is if you're consuming a lot of carbohydrates, your insulin levels stay pretty elevated. And when they stay elevated, and then your energy is also affected by that as your glucose levels are starting to drop, you have insulin hanging around. To have more energy, you obviously want to eat more to
mm,
keep your energy level up. So you have to manage insulin in a good way so that it works for you, not against you. So you have a lot of insulin floating around, you have insulin resistance. Insulin resistance means that the body can't break down all this glucose the way it needs to, and then that's going to lead to elevated glucose readings, and then to eventually being pre-diabetic. Then it goes to diabetes. That's why we have a huge diabetes problem.
mm.
So to get rid of belly fat, you got to learn to burn fat as your all-day energy system and not rely on the quick energy of carbs and sugars.
Mm. Sorry, I've just written down there a beautiful phrase: your all-day energy system. So talk. Yeah, that makes sense. That's easy to understand, and that's easy to comprehend. That's different to what what we are currently doing. So just expand on that a little bit more if you can.
So what you have to do, you got to convert your quick energy system of sugars and carbs. You need to convert that over to using fat as your energy system, which is ketones. So the way you have to do that, you have to really reduce your carbohydrate intake down to what I call a detox period. And that's typically 8 to 10 days where you do minimum carbohydrates.
Mhm.
Because what happens is you're going to drop your insulin all the way down. So once the
Mm,
insulin's all the way down, the body's like, hey, we need energy.
mm,
And so the body starts figuring out, okay, what are our other energy systems? And that's when it starts pulling the ketones. Okay. So now you're burning fat.
mm,
Now, the thing that people need to realize is, you can use keto as an idea, which we're talking about that to some degree,
Yeah.
but you can't do keto, in my opinion, based on working with my clients, long term either, because you still need carbohydrates for the gut microbiome. So I have what's called a carb cycling strategy. So I stay low carb for a certain amount of time, depending on how lean I am or I want to be. Then I have carb reload days. And those carb reload days will replenish the muscles in the liver with what it needs to maintain things.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Thank you. And that was what you touched on, what I was wanting you to touch on there, which was the gut health side of things, because we see that sort of thing happening with, we try something and then we muck up something else. So it's about having that correct balance and understanding how to work that balance, from what I'm hearing.
Yeah, when you start taking foods out of the system, again, we're talking natural food. Processed food, you don't really want that anyways. That's just from, I have every now and then at the best. But when you start taking foods out of your system, that affects the gut microbiome, and that's going to affect your immune system and other processes that your body needs to work with. So that's why you can't just go one direction and stay that direction. So with carb cycling, you as you get leaner, you have carbs more often, because you'll need them to reload the muscles in the liver. But when you're not very lean, you don't need too many. And one thing that we'll say here is that when you eat protein, people don't realize when you eat protein, even high quality protein, you only absorb like 40 to 50% of the protein. The rest of it is converted to glucose. So you're getting glucose anyways when you eat protein. And people don't realize that. So that's why you can have protein and fats and still have a good amount of glucose in your system.
Which is why people think they're doing the right thing, but they're actually not doing the right thing, because they've got that, it's already there. They're actually overloading it. Is that what I'm hearing there?
Yeah, well, you overload it when you have too much.
Too much.
And to be realistic about it, I mean, 3 meals a day, depending on your lifestyle, is probably way more than you really need. Okay, so that's another thing people need to kind of keep in mind is, do you really need 3 meals a day?
Wow. Okay.
Because there's plenty of science showing that that's really not that critical, especially if you're using fat as your energy system. I mean, that's stored energy in the first place.
Yeah. Oh, you've challenged me on that one, because I'm a constant eater. I'm not dealing very well with that.
Well, I mean, you can still do 3 meals a day, but there's a lot of I've done all kinds of techniques, and like I do a full day fast 1 day a week, and I'm a bodybuilder.
I was just going
People
to
look
say,
at like I got 3 eyeballs because I don't eat any food for 24 hours. But there's a lot of benefits to that.
Yeah. Yeah, I will say I am challenged around the food intake, because I'm very much like a Labrador. I like my food a lot. I'm going to say I hope I eat mostly the right foods, but we'll just put that one to the side a little bit. But I have actually fasted on occasion. I don't do it regularly. I should get round to doing it again, because the difference that your body feels afterwards, for me was significant. So I do understand that side of things. And as you've said, I'm far from an optimum performance individual, and certainly as you are with the bodybuilding and those sides of things, if somebody that's at that peak performance side of things can do it and gets the benefits from it, I think that in itself is a lesson that there's more for us individuals like me to actually know and understand. Really sort of tips on that.
Let me say this on fasting. The way you make fasting easier is you're being in a low carb state, okay, because you're going to be burning fat. And so the way I do a fast, for example, a 24-hour fast. I mean, you can do 16-8 and other things, and I'll explain the benefits of a 24-hour fast. But the way I do it is I'll have my last meal, say at 7 p.m. So, I don't have any more food, and then I wake up, my insulin's going to be low, maybe an hour or 2 hours after that. So I'm going to be burning fat, and then I'm going to wake up, I'm still burning fat, and I just have coffee, tea, water. So I've got some stimulants there, some energy. You don't necessarily have to do it that way. That's just how I do it. And so I'm really busy, and I get a lot of stuff done, but I'm not worried about stopping and eating. I just get the fluids, stay hydrated, I don't take any supplements on that day. And I'll explain
Okay.
why. But then around 7 o'clock, I'll have a meal, and I'm going to have what I want to have in that meal. I'll have my carbohydrates, proteins, whatever, and I feel good. But I
Yeah.
don't crave anything during that 24-hour period because of the way I set it up.
Yeah.
So let me just highlight the benefits of a 24-hour fast. Fasting, what they're showing right now is when you go into that state, it's a little bit of stress state. Okay, it's called hormesis, which basically means what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, as an example. But this little bit of stress that you're going through causes the body to cannibalize and eat up excess proteins that weren't digested. So that clears out any excess. It also helps to get rid of senescent old cells that aren't doing what they need to be doing. They're not functioning properly. So this can help with cancer is what they're stating now. But yeah, that's still under study. But the body will cannibalize these cells because it uses it for energy. Then on top of that, it starts to affect the bone marrow because of the mild stress and starts to stimulate stem cells. So now we have new cells that are stimulated. And again, it's not huge, but again, we're talking about small amounts. And then you start feeling better. So, and you're clearing out the insulin that's staying down, you're clearing out your intestinal system, everything's getting cleansed there. So I like it. I think it's a great thing. I think people should consider doing it, once a week or, periodically to just help clear out their system.
Yeah. That makes better sense. And I think that if I look at myself, the stress factor is the stress is all in my own head. Because we all know that if we're sick or unwell, that we might not eat for several days. I've had periods like that, whereas the stress and the stuff going on in my head, it's a different conversation. So it's all in my case, self-inflicted in that scenario. But you've talked through. I understand that now, and it's just getting those sorts of things right, which is good. So let's talk about if someone's starting to do the right things to lose the body fat in the right ways. They've also done their comprehensive blood work. So I suppose I'd like to ask is there some commonalities that you see as it relates to the blood work findings that come back? And then I'd like to sort of talk about the resistance training, because you used a word, I can't remember it, as sarcopenia. Yes, because that was a word I'd never seen or heard before. So if we can sort of talk lead into that would be great, because that was something very.
You want me to lead into that now, or?
Yeah, that'd be lovely.
Okay. So sarcopenia is basically what ends up taking us out over time. It's muscle wasting. So as we age and our hormones continue to decline, you lose muscle tissue. And you lose muscle tissue anyways because of the steady decline of your body processes and things like that, because of the way the cells are rebuilding and things that go with that. So sarcopenia starts getting worse and worse. And you'll see with people who are older, all of a sudden they're getting leaner and leaner. So what happens, they're burning their muscle tissue up. And typically not getting enough protein is going to cause that. And when people start cutting back on their protein intake for different reasons or different beliefs and things like that, that's what gets them in trouble. So you want to have resistance training to keep as much muscle tissue on your body as possible. Okay. And that minimizes sarcopenia and it minimizes muscle wasting, but you do need the quality protein intake, because like I mentioned before, you're only going to absorb 40 to 50% of that protein. So, and the protein is critical for your enzymes and all your body processes. That's why you have to have it. You can't survive without it. So sarcopenia gets worse and worse, and then it cascades to the point where you start with dysfunctionality. You don't have the strength to move and things like that.
Yeah, and I did Google it quickly to get an understanding of that. And I remember when my parents got older, they went into a nursing home because my mum had a stroke, and we were filling out the form. And one of the nurses said to us, because there was quite a number of young people in the facility as well. And one of the things she said, yes, if people can't get up out of their chair themselves, then they generally have to go into a high care environment. And it was like, but wow. And that comes back to that strength and that muscle fading and obviously core and those sorts of things. But that was why I found that I wanted to talk about the muscle evaporating or disappearing and stuff, because I think that's such a critical thing that, you know, you can get out of your chair with that rocking, as you see people do, but then all of a sudden you can't, and by that time it's too late. So what can we do and understand as preventative measures? So thank you for sharing that.
Sure.
So let's go back a little bit to some of the common things that come up in the blood tests,
Okay.
and then how you utilize that information into all that you do to support these men get their optimum health and physique back.
Okay, so when I have comprehensive blood work done, once the lab results come back, I have two different medical groups that review the lab work. And the purpose of that is to determine what the corrective protocol is going to be to get them back into optimal range with everything that's not in optimal range in the lab work. So, for example, a simple one that most guys can probably relate to is if your testosterone level is low, then we can correct that. We can do it a lot of different ways. And, you know, I would recommend doing the natural approach as much as possible. But if that's not working, then there are prescriptions that can be done to help get it back into optimal range. You know, testosterone is very vital for man for a lot of their processes. So, and there's two types of testosterone. You have free testosterone, you have total testosterone. But there are other things in that lab work, like estrogen, which is called estradiol for men. If it gets elevated, it starts to what's called aromatize with the testosterone and bind with it. So you don't get as much free testosterone. So you don't have that energy, that normal zip, that recovery. And another thing that can do, it can cause your sex-binding hormone globulins to get elevated. And that also binds with testosterone. So these things can shut down a guy's ability to even use the current testosterone that they're making. And there's things you can do to correct that. But unless you know that, you're just going to be on the struggle bus. So, and that's what happens. Now, there's other things like, you know, your IGF-1, which is your growth hormone release. That's also a critical thing to be checking to make sure it's staying at a good level, because growth hormone is important for your other body processes. Then you have DHT, cortisol. So you have also hormone precursors. The hormone precursors like pregnenolone and DHEA sulfate, these help you to make hormones. And so if they're low, you may just need to take some of that to bring your testosterone back up as well. And they're over-the-counter type of supplements that you can get pretty easily, but people don't know this. And so once we get the lab work back, the two medical teams review it, and then we put together the protocol. And then we work on that protocol, and then we retest after a certain period of time. It could be 6 weeks, 8 weeks, depending, because when you integrate new hormones into the cells and get the levels back up, it takes time. You know, it takes 5 to 6 weeks, even if you're on therapy. It takes that long for most people, but some people feel benefits earlier than others. So, as a quick example.
Yeah, and I think too, we were talking about that one of the comments that you had on your website and what we discussed was that when men get to a point in life where they just can't find the answers, and that's obviously where you've been able to help them. So talk us through, you said that you went about figuring it out for yourself, and obviously now this is a key area that you're helping men with. But talk us through what the perspective of the men before they get to that point of that denial and not being able to share stuff with anyone or talk about it.
Well, guys try to figure things out on their own, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's a natural reflex. But and you know, same thing for me. But what you have to do is, okay, you just got to find, okay, who do you go to? And so I did the natural thing, went to my doctor. Well, he's like, yeah, you're just getting older, get used to it. So I got that lecture with several different doctors. So I'm like, okay, well, that's not going to work. So then that's when you have to kind of start finding who can you talk to help you better understand what's going on, because the lack of energy, the excess belly fat, and unexplained things that are happening. This is aging starting to speed up, and this also is going to lead to cardiovascular disease, and it leads to elevated blood pressure. It's going to lead to other inflammatory factors that the body's dealing with, but it can't control because of the lack of hormones, the lack of the proper nutrition, and so it affects their energy level. So then they start leaning to caffeine. They lean in on other stimulants. Then they can't drink the alcohol like they used to, and
Yes.
resilient the next day. I mean, I went through that,
Yeah.
and they're like, well, okay, they start cutting it back, and then it leads to ED, erectile dysfunction, and so they're kind of getting denial about, well, what do you do for that? And that's
Mm,
that's another thing that affects a guy, because when you're young and everything's working, you know, you're always in a good mood. Things are going great, but
yeah.
that's when they start seeking some help, when they start having ED, because it starts affecting themselves personally, and then also
And
their life at home. So
yeah. Yeah. And are you finding, because I've had conversations with other people, that the erectile dysfunction is actually happening so much earlier now because of the lifestyle? Have you seen that
yeah,
trending? Yeah.
well, there's a lot of arguments on what's causing it.
Yeah.
First and foremost, though, a lot of carbohydrate, sugar is not good for your hormones. Okay,
Yeah.
fats are good for hormones, but fats get thrown on the bus because of cholesterol and other concerns, which are
Yeah.
now becoming more dispelled as well from additional research.
Yeah.
But fats are what hormones like, and then proteins is what they need. You only
Mm,
need carbohydrates for energy. So if you're eating a
mm,
lot of sugary, carby foods and eating on the run, and eating a lot of processed food, that's going to affect it. Plus, also in the food system, especially in the United States, we have a lot of glyphosates because of the fertilizer, and the
uh,
glyphosates feel like are mimicking estrogen. So the guys that have that issue, that's where they get the man boobs and other things, because their
mm,
estrogen levels are coming up, and they're not able to use their testosterone, so they make less and less testosterone, and that's why we have that problem going on.
yeah. And talk us through, you mentioned to me that you have as part of your program, and I'd love to explore more of the program and how you go about that, but you also talked about that you've got a Facebook group, and being a men-only Facebook group, it gives men the ability to have more of those conversations that they perhaps wouldn't normally have at the pub, for example, or around the bar, but they then start to see that they're not the only one going through similar examples. So talk us through some of the experience of what you see within your community.
Well, so I don't have technically a Facebook group. I'm getting ready to put one together, but for what I'm with the clients I'm working with. So what I'm talking about is I'm involved with other Facebook groups
Ah,
with guys that are looking at hormone issues,
mm,
and there's just unfortunately, a lot of bad information going on in those.
yes,
So I'm in there trying to help out.
yeah,
Okay. But even when you're dealing with guys, even though you're helping, trying to help, you get a lot of arguing goes on because some guy feels differently or they read something else. But there's a lot of people struggling. And
yeah,
so, like, guys will get in and say, I can't lose any body fat. And then all the other guys jump in there and start saying, we just got to do this, this, and this. You just got to be in a calorie deficit.
yeah,
Well, calorie deficit's one thing, but that doesn't necessarily help you lose body fat. It'll help you lose weight, but it's not gonna help
mm,
you lose body fat, because there's a big difference on that.
mm,
So then
mm,
I'll chime in a little bit. Oh, they'll be talking about their hormones and all the different issues, how they feel. They
mm,
say they've started hormone therapy, but they're not feeling the right way. And
mm,
there's a lot that you need to know and understand when you're doing that.
yeah,
And also, you really need to exercise to get the hormones to get into the cells. It helps speed up that process and make it more effective. But if
mm,
you just do hormone therapy and don't do anything and keep doing
mm,
what you're doing, you're not going to get that much benefit from it. You're just replacing some of the hormone you don't have, but it's not going to magically solve your problems. And some of the guys felt that that would happen.
yeah,
And no, there's more to it than that. So does
yeah.
that kind of give you an idea there?
Yeah, very much so, because I think you've also again touched on a key element there, which is, and don't we all do this? Don't we all look for and I'm going to call it a magic pill, because I always
Yeah.
remember, in the Matrix, it's, do you want the red pill or the blue pill? And we always want whichever one's going to give us the quickest result, but we don't actually have to do any work for it. But the ultimately of what I hear when I have conversations like this is, yes, there is a thing. something that will help make the difference, but there's always work involved. It's like when I talk to my new speaker clients, it's, oh, I'll just put some posts on social media, and it's like, yeah, but are you going to have conversations with your clients? Because that's where the real magic actually happens. There's work to be done. So I think that's such a great thing to shine the light on, is that, yes, there is things that can certainly assist you, and obviously you have to have the right information and the right things to suit you, which is why coming back to the bloods becomes very, very important. But there is work that needs to be involved, and I'm sitting here as I'm saying this, I've got my own voice in my head going, yeah, that's right, Sally, that includes exercise for yourself, because I walk my dog and I think I do enough, but and that was why I was curious about the resistance training, because I look at my own magic pill version, I'm doing sort of most of the right sort of things, I think, but I'm still not feeling quite right the way I would like to, which now for me with this conversation means there's some little bit more work that I need to do. And I think if I can shine the light on that for me, then that's probably the case for lots of people. And what I was hearing with the guys, they're all looking for the quick fix, and somebody's got and everybody else has always got the answer, versus looking internally as to what's going on for us specifically. And then utilising the right resources to get the bloods, go through the medical scenarios to get the right protocol for you, and then and then starting to do some work as it relates to resistance training. So is that a common thing, if, again, that people avoid doing the work part, which for me, listening to this is, if you're doing all the right things with, trying to get the right supplements and those sorts of things, do people still try to skip doing the work of the fitness side of things as badly as I do?
Well, it's a decision that people are going to make. Now, the people I work with, while I'm already doing resistance training, they just aren't doing it the way to get the results that they want. So I don't have too much of that with the people that I'm working with currently. So the bigger thing for them is, okay, what do I need to do to kind of, maybe the guy wants a bigger chest, wants a bigger arms, and also to improve. When you improve your muscle tissue, your metabolism also speeds up. And plus, muscle is the fifth the size of fat, so you're going to be looking leaner and tighter by having more muscle. And it helps your posture, it helps your mobility. So there's a tremendous amount of benefits from it. It's just a matter of, you have to find what works for your lifestyle and keep it simple. So like training for me, I'm a professional and I only train 45 minutes, and I train very hard for 45 minutes. Most people can just do 30 minutes of some resistance training strategy and get a tremendous amount of benefits from it, because it's going to help you. I mean, because your body breaks down, you do resistance training, and then it has to rebuild itself. So it's always in the repair process. And if you fuel that with good nutrition, supplementation is needed, and then your hormones are optimized, you get really good results and you feel good. So you take back control of your life versus dealing with and so this actually helps to slow down the aging process. If you're successful, maybe something you're interested in, to slow it down, to enjoy that success that you've got yourself done.
And I think that's the key thing you've actually said there, is keeping it simple, bringing it into your lifestyle. And do you only do your 45 minutes of hard training a day, even as a bodybuilder?
I only do 5 days a week. So you need time off with the central nervous system adapt. And again, I train at a pretty high level, but that's all I need. But I also know what I'm doing, and I know how my body responds because I'm really in tune to it. So you don't need to train 7 days a week and that kind of stuff. I mean, I have some guys that's what they want to do, and I encourage them not to do that, because they're going to get better results and they get better recovery. Because you don't get recovery, it just doesn't matter what you're doing. You're not going to feel as good.
No, and that was you came to the area that I wanted, is when people do that it's almost the extremeness of the fitness and all the rest of it, and their
Yeah.
recovery feels so terrible. You're not inspired to continue moving on because you're actually not feeling good. Obviously, there's a period where that'll occur, but this is where the recovery and understanding your body and your nutrition and what's lacking, it becomes so important that your recovery. You shouldn't be thrashing your body so much that it takes a long time to recover, but the recovery in itself becomes so important. So what does is there such a thing as a recovery regime? Is there something that you do to help recovery be better, or is that something that you do beforehand by understanding the nutrition and what you should be doing for your body as far as exercise goes?
Well, the first step with anybody I work with is I want to see what they've been doing. Okay.
Yeah.
And then you want to put a program together. So based on what they're currently doing and start to boost it up a little bit, but not too much, and then see how they respond.
Mm.
If you're going all out all the time, if I was training 7 days a week, which I've done in the past, you
Yeah.
get burnt out. You're so burnt
Yeah.
out. You're like, oh my God. So you don't want to do that. You want to keep it fresh. You
Yeah.
keep it fresh by changing up what you're doing so you don't have a certain expectation of how this workout is going to go. God had to learn that over a long period of time as well.
Yeah.
So when it comes to the recovery part, sleep is critical. And
You
so
mentioned
now I use what's called a Aura ring, which is this little
Mhm.
ring right here. And a lot
Familiar
of
with
people may are familiar with it. So what that does, it tells me how much deep sleep and REM sleep I'm getting per night.
Mm.
And I can tell if things are working because the heart rate comes down pretty good. Um, and then it's monitoring your sleep. So if I get good deep sleep and REM sleep, I feel really good. But
Mm.
there's days when I don't get that because I may have overdone it, and then I don't feel as good. So that just means I need to back off what I'm going to train that day if I'm going to be training, or take it easier because I didn't get that recovery. And
Yeah.
this keeps your system from getting too overwhelmed, and allows you to keep things at a higher level like you used to have them.
Mm. Mm. Brilliant. And that's why, as you said, sleep becomes so important, and changing things up to suit the amount of correct or the right sleep hygiene that you've had and those sorts of things as it relates to your routine.
Yeah, because sleep is when your hormones do the work. So if you start short circuiting the sleep, your hormones don't get to do the work. That's gonna then when that happens, like with people that have really stressful lives and don't get much sleep, that's gonna
Mm.
take a toll over their lifetime because
Mm.
their hormones, if you don't use them, they don't keep making as much.
Mm.
So that's another thing. These people, the younger people that stay up all night and then try to do their day on 4 or 5 hours sleep, that's when they
Yeah.
start running into problems because the hormones can't do the repair process, the things they need to do for the brain.
Mm.
It's just a very delicate system. So, and I've figured that out too because I used to do that. I mean,
Mm.
who hasn't?
Yeah.
If I At this point, if I get 8 hours of good sleep, I'm bulletproof the next day. I feel good. I don't have to worry about anything. Energy's good. That's how it works for me.
Yeah. Yeah, very well said. So as we're coming towards the end, and as always, all great conversations happen very, very quickly. Tell the audience a little bit more about your missing keys checklist that they can get from your website, so they can find out more about how they can support themselves, but also then how you can support them also.
Yeah. So the Mystic Key cheat sheet is just going to give you some understanding about how over time, how the hormones start to decline, and key factors you want to be looking for, and then things you can do to start working on improving them naturally. But
Mm.
it's also going to say you need to probably get some blood work done. And unfortunately, the blood work thing is still not where it needs to be, and it's still a little bit expensive, but
Mm.
it's getting better, and that's
Yeah.
good news. So, but you need to know what to ask for, and it's like this: if you go to ask a doctor to have a hormone panel done for you, they're not going to want to do it.
Yeah.
Now, people are like, well, why wouldn't they? They're not schooled in it, for one. And even if
Mm.
they did do the test, they don't know what to tell you how to correct anything that's in there.
Yeah.
They don't know the protocols. So why would they want to even step into that? Because now
Yeah.
they're not going to look knowledgeable in front of you. So, and I get that. So
Mm.
that's why at this point in time, I got involved because, guys, I can get blood work for people. And then
Mm.
once we get that done and I have the medical teams that review it, I have people that understand what we're looking for. And then we start working on it and boom, Now they get a better understanding of how to approach what's affecting them.
Yeah. Terrific. And what you've explained there as far as the experience with the doctors was exactly mine. So I'm glad you went through that as well. Are you able to help people with it as it relates to the blood works and support them from anywhere around the globe, or just in the US?
Well, I've only worked with a couple of people out of the country, but it's not easy. So I can give them a panel on what they can ask for. So if somebody's in another country and they have a doctor that's willing to look at what needs to get done, then I can help with that.
Yeah.
And each country is different on how it does prescriptions and how it does supplements and things like that. So if you're in another country, I have to do a little more digging to find out the best way to help you. Here in the States, it's still a little messy. So because some of the doctors, they want to argue about what the protocol is because they don't agree, even though they don't necessarily know what they're talking about. It's an ego kind of thing. So so that happens, and you have to kind of buffer that. So but I do that with the client, explain, here's what's going to be happening. You can share it with your doctor. They may not agree, and some of them, the doctors want to know more. They're like, okay, how you doing all this? So it just depends on who you're working with.
Yeah, terrific. So for those that are in Australia, with the support there, I found it was the allied health places. So where there was more than just doctors, they had some of the other different modalities in the clinical practices, and then they're much more willing to do, because they're already doing some of these tests. It's just a case of finding the right one. But I did have to go to a couple of my normal doctor was exactly not helpful, like you said, and when I challenged him on it a second time, he explained that we're not trained in that, we don't understand it, therefore we can't do it. So he was willing enough to have an honest conversation with me as to why
that's pretty good, because some of them don't want to. They're like, just don't worry about it. You're just aging. You don't need that. I mean, it's just amazing what comes out of their mouth. I'm like, oh, mackerel.
Absolutely. So I wanted to really highlight that, because there is options out there. So it's been a fantastic conversation. You can catch up with Arman at eliteexecmethod.com, which we've just got on up on the screen for you. So if you are a man over 40, or your man over 40 is struggling with his health or physique, then you can certainly find out more information from Arman. Check out the checklist, and certainly look into the ways in which you can improve your health and your lifestyle, so you can get back to doing the things that you love and being energized and energetic whilst you're doing them. Thank you so much for sharing so much with us today. Do you have any closing comments, Arman?
Well, I would just say, if you want to take back control of your health, you can do that with the technologies available. So don't just suffer. Take back control, but it'll be a process to learn what's going to work for you. But get with the right people to help you, and also keep learning. There's a lot of good resources out there. So just, keep searching for it. It's getting better. I can tell you that.
Yeah, brilliant. And that, the Aura Ring, I'm a little bit familiar with those, and that comes into a technology or a tool that you can utilize that actually helps you understand what's happening in your own body, as well as doing those research. So thank you once again for sharing so much of your wisdom with us. It's been a pleasure to discover more and learn more. So thank you very much for joining us, and we will look forward to seeing you all on another episode of Success Secrets Exposed. See you next week. Thank you.
All right. Pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's it for this week's episode. Thank you so much for joining us, and I trust that you got some inspirational tips to move you forward. You can find this episode along with many more on your favorite streaming platform such as iHeartRadio, Spotify, iTunes, and more. See you next Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time for more Success Secrets Exposed with Sally A. Curtis.